Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Jayne, Jayne Chappell. I'm the membership manager here at Social Enterprise Scotland. And I'm hosting today's session, which is basically looking at how volunteering can intentionally be designed as an employability pathway. Thank you all for coming along and joining us today. Just for those who aren't aware, Social Enterprise Scotland is the national intermediary and membership body for social enterprises across Scotland, and we are here to basically to bang the drum for social enterprise and to promote, support, connect and represent the sector. A few housekeeping points before we start. If you're comfortable, we'd love you to keep your cameras on. I think it makes us feel like we're all in the room together. And it's just nice to see your faces as well. But there's no pressure. If you prefer cameras to be off, that's perfectly fine too. If you can remain on mute during the presentations, that would be much appreciated. And please do use the chat today to introduce yourself, to tell us which organisation you're from. And also, if there's anything that you're particularly curious about today, anything that you would particularly like to learn from today as well, I think that would be quite helpful for us. So today is really about exploring volunteering, not just as something valuable in itself, but as a genuine employability pathway. So for many people, particularly those facing barriers to employment, volunteering can be the thing that creates confidence, that creates connection, and can be a vital stepping stone for people. And social enterprises have a huge role to play in creating that flexible, supportive pathway that recognises people's strengths and abilities and potential. So just to give you a sense of what's happening today, I'm delighted that we have three speakers from two fantastic organisations. So we'll be hearing from Volunteering Matters and Green Hive today. There will be time at the end for questions and discussion together. And then we'll finish with a very short evaluation survey as well. So, nothing further from me, I don't think. We're going to start with Volunteering Matters. So, among the many services that Volunteering Matters provide, they deliver a supported volunteering programme to help people with barriers access tailored placements. So, I am going to hand over to Sam and Stewart from Volunteering Matters, who are going to tell you more. Sam, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jayne. So I'm Sam. I'm the Senior Fundraising Manager at Volunteering Matters, and Stewart will be talking about a little bit more specifically what we do later. I'm going to start us off on a bit more generally, talking about volunteering, why it's great, as well as some of the misconceptions that we often see. So if you don't know Volunteering Matters, we are a UK-wide charity that exists to create stronger communities through volunteering. So we've been operating since 1962 now. We've championed volunteering as a really powerful tool to kind of build thriving, resilient societies. We kind of recognise and we try to understand that, volunteering is maybe not every top of everyone's to-do list. There's really lots of things that we do in our lives, whether it's work or whether it's, look after children or family support. But we try to create really inclusive and flexible opportunities that support people to volunteer at any stage of their life. And then beyond delivering projects on the ground, we also use our voice to shape policy and practice. So we try to make sure that volunteering is constantly recognised and supported and sustainable for generations to come. Essentially, we do a little bit of everything as long as it involves volunteering. Within Scotland, that includes contributing to the Volunteering Action Plan, all the way from Dumfries and Galloway to Aberdeenshire. We've got local projects as well. We do lots and bits of everything. Like I said, we support young people, older people, children, families. We've got volunteers from age 3 to 100. So yeah, a little bit of everything. We're going to start off with a very, very quick poll, if this works for me. We just want to ask, and this maybe is a bit skewed group, how often do you volunteer? Hopefully you can see that on your screen now. The option should be weekly, monthly, a few times a year, rarely, never, not sure. There'll be no judgment here. But we do want to see if there's a difference between the start of my little conversation here and at the end. So we've got weekly, monthly, a couple of times a year, a couple of nevers. I'll give it a couple more minutes, or not a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds, and then I'll just end that. So a few times a year is kind of seeming like the most popular, as well as monthly. Okay, that's great to know. But that's most of the things then anyway. So the reason that, you see that, fantastic, hope everyone can see that. So yeah, a few times a year, monthly, weekly, kind of the most common versions. A couple of nevers in there as well. No judgment here. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll see that sometimes we are volunteering. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Jayne. So as part of our organizational strategy that we launched last year, we developed what we're calling the volunteering ecosystem. It's intended to kind of recognize that people engage in volunteering in lots of different ways at different times in their lives, and outlines what we think is a really flexible model for engaging in volunteering. We kind of realized that we support some volunteers really, really well and some forms of volunteering not so great. And this is to kind of balance that out a bit, because realistically we should be supporting all types of volunteering equally. So to take you around the list, this isn't in any particular order, it's just how we've kind of like to represent it. So we've got flexible or one-off volunteering. So think about it as like entry-level opportunities that are really easy to access and fit around your life. Maybe supporting a charity event or something like that. You've got volunteering through relationships. So regular supportive roles built around human connection, built around trust. That might be like befriending or something like that. You've got skilled or focused volunteering. So roles that draw on lived or professional experience and offer targeted support. So we find a lot of our employability mentoring falls into that. You've got leading and organising, which we talk about volunteers taking on leadership roles to help shape projects and influence direction using their insight and experience. This could be like trusteeship. And then we've got changing systems. So long-term engagement where volunteers help influence policy, improve services, and create structural change. For example, maybe like a steering group or a panel. So this ecosystem that we've developed kind of supports this flexible movement between stages. People can pause, return, shift, skip stages. It's not really in any order, like I said. But importantly for me anyway, I think it recognises the volunteering that we don't always consider as volunteering. Those kind of neighbourly contributions, such as bringing someone soup when they're sick or cutting the grass for your neighbour, something like that. They're all things that we probably do, but we maybe don't call it volunteering. And I think our question to everyone after our strategies was, why aren't we counting that? It should still definitely count. Next slide, please, Jayne. So fab. So I wanted to talk you through some of the misunderstandings and misconceptions of volunteering that we often see and some of the barriers sometimes people face, which Stewart will go into a little bit more later. We find often the misunderstandings around who can volunteer are most prevalent. So we often get questions around volunteers under the age of 16. So maybe questions around policies, insurance, and risk often come up, when the reality is there is very little difference between hosting a 15-year-old volunteer and a 17-year-old volunteer. There can be differences in the support they need, but that is also the case between two 17-year-olds. Age isn't really the factor there. We have volunteers, like I said, from age 3 to 100. And if they are willing and capable, then who are we to say no? And then through our Youth VIP programme this year, which is a national Scottish project, we are working with Volunteer Scotland, who I think I saw a couple of people on the call this year, to do some real myth busting on this topic. So keep an eye out for any links to support there. Oh, Jayne, can you go back one, please? Thank you. Additionally, from an inclusion and accessibility standpoint, we often find that people think they can't volunteer, maybe due to a disability or health needs or socioeconomic status sometimes as well. Again, while some people may require more support than others, everyone is capable of volunteering. It's just about finding the right type of support or the right role for them. And I'm sure Stewart will talk a little bit more about this in his practical examples after. We've got cost. It's often seen as a barrier. I think the cost of living crisis is probably impacting us all at the moment. And it is definitely leading to reduced levels of volunteering. But we believe that volunteering should be accessible to all. So we try and create local opportunities that have as minimal cost as possible attached to them. And if there is, so for example, for travel costs or like mileage or something like that, we reimburse people because we understand the importance of their time and energy that they give and the support that they give to others. I'd also like to say for any funders on the call that the cost of supporting volunteers is not free. And I'm sure all of us can recognise that. And good and effective volunteer management does in fact come at a cost. And then finally, we've got time. So some people think that volunteering is a waste of time. It might not be the top of everyone's to-do list, as we've mentioned, but we have to recognise that priorities shift and change, but it's definitely not a waste of time. So you can gain confidence, skills, networks, and experience all through volunteering. These are just some. You've probably got your own misunderstandings and misconceptions that you've seen in your organisations as well, but these are just the kind of most common ones that we see. So if you go to the next slide now, please, Jayne. So why is volunteering important then? Generally, humans are very community-minded beings. We are used to reciprocal relationships and supporting one another. There are reasons why we talk about challenges and difficult things still taking a village. We very much rely on that, and that's how we kind of operate. So volunteering is a great way to do that. These are kind of some headlines on the slides. So we've got helping others. That's the kind of first thing I think people think of. They think of volunteering as giving to others, but often I don't think that they think about what volunteering can do for themselves as well, which is something like increased networks. If you want to meet new people, volunteering is a fantastic way to do that. Skills development. If you are looking to develop new skills, whether it's a very specific niche skill or it's something transferable like a soft skill, then volunteering is a fantastic way to kind of learn and to start practicing that. And then finally, gaining confidence. So again, another way to practice and to try and, fake it till you make it sometimes is just to throw yourself in the deep end maybe. And volunteering is a fantastic way to gain confidence. Fantastic. And next slide, please, Jayne. So for this next section, I'm also going to give out a shout out to Volunteer Scotland, who do some fantastic research and analysis on the state of volunteering in Scotland. The reference for this information comes from their technical report, which I've linked at the bottom of the slide, so it'll be sent out afterwards. So they've discovered that the lack of investment in culture, sport, leisure economies has really impacted volunteering in Scotland, and that these central facilities are often hotspots for formal volunteering and are many people's gateway into volunteering. I myself started out as a sport volunteer. I was a hockey coach for 5 years, and now I work at a charity that talks about the importance of volunteering every day. So the kind of pathway exists through those services. But despite this lack of investment, volunteering is still contributing to the Scottish economy, and quite frankly, it's making a significant contribution. I'm going to quote directly from their report here, but they say that the social value of weekly formal volunteering in Scotland is approximately £1,000 per person per year, which scaled to the population level is approximately £530 million. So when you combine that with the economic value of the time people spend formally volunteering, it means that Scottish volunteers are contributing £2.3 billion to the Scottish economy in terms of their time and higher well-being. So it's not exactly a small amount that volunteering is contributing to. And then additionally, if you think about community-based support, talking about prevention and the needs for costly statutory services and becoming overstrained, for example, if we can reduce the need for statutory services through community-based support at community level, maybe there'll be less need for clinical mental health support, for example. Reducing the strain on costly services and services that are already stretched, so for example, the NHS, is drastically needed and also helps save money for the Scottish economy. So not only is volunteering really vital for individuals, it's vital for organisations, communities and services, it's really vital for Scotland at this point. And lucky there is some recent data that shows that volunteering is actually hopefully going to be stabilising and hopefully rising again soon. There we go. Jayne, can you go next slide, please? And I also want to talk a bit about employee volunteering, because I think it's something that not all of us think about. And I'm sure that many of you get volunteering days within your organisation or company, but I do wonder how many of us actually use them. Some companies know the value of volunteering, and that's great for their local community, but many forget that it's also brilliant for their staff. We deliver an employee volunteering service that supports from one-off team building days to longer-term partnership. It really varies. And on the screen, you'll see 4 main benefits that we find from employee volunteering. So meaningful social impact. So the social and environmental impact of companies is becoming increasingly important to customers and for winning business contracts. And in Scotland, you'll know that statutory contracts now require a community benefit and to have some social value. Volunteering is one way that you can do this. You've got skills development and employee volunteer programs, which are an excellent way for an opportunity to build skills amongst your team, especially outside of the normal day-to-day. You've got employee well-being. So volunteering can enhance team morale and company loyalty whilst improving individual well-being, especially if it's getting away from your screen that you're maybe used to. And improved morale and well-being helps people feel happier and more productive at their work. And then you've kind of got that double impact. So by undertaking volunteering with local groups or charities or services, you're helping them on their mission, which then creates this continuous knock-on impact of good support for your community. Last slide from me then, please, Jayne. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with this closing message, and then we'll do the poll again. So this is something that we developed as part of our strategy. So we believe volunteering is an act of optimism, a quiet rebellion against the idea that one person cannot make a difference. So I think this is partly why we're talking about, volunteering is what you make it and what you want it to be. And it can be as grand or as small as you want it to be. And it can be those neighbourly contributions too. So if I run the poll again, I'm wondering if people now think they volunteer more or less than they did before. They maybe don't do formal volunteering. I'll see, we're already seeing quite a bit of difference. We've got a lot more monthly and weekly now. Very rarely never. I'll give it a couple more seconds and then share those results. Fantastic. So hopefully you can see that now. So you can see that we've got a lot more monthly and weekly and much less never for volunteering. I'm now going to pass you over to Stuart, who's going to talk about his brilliant work in Dundee, supporting volunteers.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, my name's Stewart, and I am the volunteer manager for Voluntary Matters MSV project based in Dundee. So MSV stands for Mentoring and Supported Volunteering, a part of the council-funded All in Dundee Employability Pathway Consortium, where I work alongside 5 other charities in Dundee, which are Enable, One Parent Family Scotland, Helm, Barnardos and Street League. All of us working to support people into employment from all backgrounds across Dundee, working to overcome their barriers. So I'm going to talk to you about how I support these individuals and organisations. So the individuals, I support them into volunteering, and how I support organisations to accept volunteers through the work I do in Dundee. Basically giving you a history of the past 2 years when the project started. And I'm going to include how this supports people onto the employability pathway, how volunteering helps the individual on this journey, and how the support offered can lead to employment, with a couple of examples. So my role is to support people into volunteering placement within the sector in which they would like to work. So the objectives are to build their confidence and structure in a working environment, gaining the skills, the training, the experience, and the references they need to boost their CV. So filling in the gaps and getting them work ready. As an additional service to the All in Dundee consortium, I work alongside the employability coordinators within Enable, One Parent Families, etc., to deliver a well-rounded service of employability support. So the way I support individuals to volunteer and how I support organisations to accept volunteers started, as I said, 2 years ago, when the All in Dundee consortium was first established. As with all such funding, there are targets, and I had a specific number of people that I needed to support into volunteering, which was set at 30. So this is the key to how the project developed on my behalf. So initially, where would these people be coming from? So the people using the service come from all backgrounds across Dundee City. So whether these people are unemployed for a short time or for a long time, and people with many very different barriers. So these barriers include different things such as mental health conditions, social anxiety, a lot of people with post-COVID barriers, neurodivergencies, refugees, and New Scots. Absolutely anybody and everybody who is living in Dundee City and has the right to work in the UK. So the service is marketed by Discover Work, which is Dundee City Council's employability team, as well as through the whole All in Dundee consortium, which is where the majority of my referrals are coming from. However, part of my role as volunteer manager for Voluntary Matters is to promote Voluntary Matters in Dundee. And so to do this, I reach out for referrals to the local job centre, promoting volunteering as a step towards employment, also recognising this by the work coaches as work experience. I also reached out to various NHS teams across Dundee, such as the Dundonald Centre, occupational therapy teams, and also people working among those with learning disabilities, just showcasing how volunteering as a step towards employment can also help to overcome barriers and how these people could make referrals to the service. I also regularly attend job fairs and volunteering related events, which is another great way to promote volunteering and to attract referrals to the project. So, as I said, I had a target of 30 people initially. Where were they going to go? So my key point really at the beginning of the project was to find at least 30 charities who would understand the project and would take on the volunteers. So I sent out an email, a template email to these charities, just to highlight the MSV project and my role in supporting volunteering, and to organise a meeting with the charity manager so that I could discuss their charity, find out what they do, and also what volunteering roles were available. At these meetings, I was able to find out much more about the less obvious volunteering roles, such as support with admin, with social media, websites, maintenance, anything gardening, anything that the charity might need that they hadn't thought about having a volunteer to support with. At these meetings, I was able to establish relationships with around 50 different charities in Dundee. And within these 50 charities, there's around 25 different volunteering roles, which covers everything from gardening to retail, working in community cafes, in kitchens, caring for children, working with animals, trustees, treasurers, everything and anything. So it's a good variety of roles that covered most sectors and developed the skills and experience for the individual for work. So, having met the referral organisations and built this relationship with the charities, what would the supported volunteering service look like? Well, the objective is to focus on the needs of the person referred and to match these needs with the volunteering role and with the charity. So this includes making sure that the environment was right. So somebody with, social anxiety wouldn't necessarily want to be working in a busy community centre. So the initial meeting with the customer would also then lead to a meeting with the manager of the charity so that the customer could see the environment and make sure they're going to get what they're wanting from that. The good thing about the charities is that they also sort out the inductions, the PVGs, the risk assessments, so that reduced my role, which was very good, and then enabled me just to make sure that the person who I've supported into volunteering is looked after and they are building their confidence, gaining the skills, the experience, and what they are looking for in that process. So in this way, there's full accessibility and support provided to get people onto the employability pathway. So additionally, the Job Centre can also provide people with 8 weeks travel expenses to all those who are volunteering, if this is required. So the Job Centre recognises this as work experience and as a positive step towards employment. Some charities as well can offer volunteers the support for travel expenses. And the bus passes are also available within Dundee City Council as well for people who are doing volunteering regularly. Again, as I said, the Job Centre does recognise this as a good step towards getting a job. So, equally, with the charities themselves, a lot of the charities, when they have funding available, they are able to offer customers first aid training with a certificate, as well as various other mental health training, safeguarding training. I had somebody recently who did a nature wellbeing training course. All these things boost again the CV for the individual who is volunteering. And also, others have taken volunteers to events to help them promote the charity, exposing them to the third sector environment and networking events. And the charities then also recognise that without the volunteers, they couldn't be as effective as they are. So therefore, they support the volunteers in many ways additional to the service that's provided by me and by the All in Dundee Consortium. So the practical support we offer in Volunteering Matters in Dundee also includes the mentoring aspect, where my 2 colleagues are able to match an individual with a mentor, and the mentor can help them build their confidence further, or if they're looking for a niche sector to work in, they can find a mentor to help there as well. So altogether, the All in Dundee Consortium offers practical support for the people I support into volunteering, and also for people who may need mentoring as well. And these partners all have access to funding, to academies, to employer engagement opportunities, ensuring that all the people in Dundee can attain employment with a wraparound support service. And so volunteering is a step towards achieving this goal. So, does it work? That's the main question. So it does indeed work. So over the past 2 years, I've supported over 100 people into different volunteering placements, and all of them have overcome a variety of barriers and benefit from the structure in their daily lives, as well as gaining skills, training, experience, and feeling closer to achieving a job in the future. And so to showcase what I do, I have a couple of examples that I'd just like to share with you of people that I've met over the last 2 years who have achieved employment through the service. So the first one, we're going to call him Peter. So Peter was referred by Enable through the All in Dundee Consortium, and his background is working with young people, and he wanted to use his own lived experience with autism to set up his own business so that he could support young people with autism to have a smoother experience through life than he had himself as a young person. And so to do this, Peter said to me that he was looking for a befriending volunteer role, as this would give him the experience he was looking for, as well as opening up for him networks and connections. So after the initial meeting with Peter, I contacted a befriending service in Dundee, and I organised a meeting with the manager and introduced Peter to the manager and to the charity. So Peter signed up and he received a 3-hour training course in advance of being matched to a young person. And over a few months, Peter was able to use this experience to build his own service and continue to get this support he was getting from his employability coordinator in Enable. And then, amazingly and really excitingly, one day funding became available in the befriending charity for a support worker to set up additional autism-related activities. Peter was offered the role, and he's now working there on a part-time basis alongside setting up his own service. So overall, supportive volunteering has allowed Peter the confidence to build his own business and to give him the connections, the networks to promote this, and the ongoing support from his employability coordinator with Enable so that he can continue on the employability pathway. The second example we'll call Maria, and she came here from Poland and she was looking for a nursing job within the NHS. So Maria attended a job fair that was held by Dundee's job centre, and I supported Maria into a voluntary placement through the NHS website, through one of the local hospitals. And Maria there tried a variety of different volunteering roles, including admin, helping with activities and chatting with patients. And the great thing about volunteering is the connections made. So for Maria, this was access to the NHS intranet, where vacancies are regularly posted. So her volunteering experience allowed her an internal candidate role. And as soon as the job came up she was looking for, Maria applied and has been accepted as a bank nurse. And today she texted last week saying she's now working full-time in the nursing role that she was wanting. And she's really happy that volunteering gave her that experience, the confidence and the networking that she was looking for. And so, as you can see from these examples, volunteering is a great way for an individual to build their confidence, to gain the skills, the training, experiences, and the references to fill the gaps and to boost their CV, so achieve the employment goals that they are looking for, as well as to make connections and networks. Volunteering also is an opportunity for employment and benefits the individual and the charity alike. And the supportive volunteering service that I work on in Dundee has helped me to support over 100 people in 2 years into volunteering roles, starting them on their pathway to employment and so boosting their confidence, as well as promoting volunteering as a beneficial step for people, for the job centre, for various NHS departments and other professional bodies. That shows really how, through examples, supportive volunteering does help people to achieve their goals. Thank you.
Struggling to come off mute there. Thanks ever so much, Stewart, and thank you, Sam. Really insightful stuff, I think, around kind of the economic and social value of volunteering, which I think we sometimes underplay on both sides. And then Stewart, I mean, I think your kind of whistle-stop tour of, I'm sure what is a much more complex job than, I think it kind of really brings it home the difference that it can make for people. And I love the case story. So thanks for the case study. So thanks for sharing that with us. And I hope you see the love hearts that are populating the screen just now. There's one question that came in from Pegs about, did you say that Job Centre Plus provided 8 weeks travel expenses for volunteering? Is that right?
Yes. I don't know if this is everywhere, but this is in Dundee job centre where I pop in once a month or so. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's promoted or if this is just a work coach said it to me and then I pass the information on and the customer speaks to their work coach and gets it. But yeah, is the answer.
Yes. Excellent. Okay, thanks very much for that. And I think you did mention the number of clients and outcomes because I think it was like 100, over 102.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculously huge. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, pretty impressive. Okay, well, thank you to both of you. I am now going to hand over to Matthew at Green Hive, who's going to share a flavour of their journey and how volunteering and building sustained local involvement has been pivotal to their development and also their volunteering ambitions as well. Matthew, do you want me to share the screen or have you?
Yeah, if you could please, Jayne.
Yeah.
I should explain to everybody, I'm the reason we had technical difficulties this morning, so I do apologise for that. What it was I changed my presentation from the one that I sent Jane a couple of days ago, so I'm slightly out of kilter with that. And then when I tried to share it this morning, it didn't work. So I'm gonna be working from the presentation that I sent Jane. I might have to jump between slides a wee bit, so do bear with me. Apologies for any confusion around that. But yeah, no. I'm really glad to be here, everybody. Nice to meet you all. My name is Matthew Withey, and I'm Chief Executive at Green Hive. And today, I want to tell you a little bit about my organisation. We're based in Nairn, which, for those of you who don't know, is about 20 miles east of Inverness, overlooking the Murray Coast and the beautiful Highlands of Scotland. Jane, could you move to the next slide, please? So this slide takes you through the executive summary from our 5-year strategic development plan. It's probably the sort of boilerplate sort of corporate speak you'd expect from such a document. But this morning, I'd like to talk more specifically about the things that the things we're seeing here and how they're kind of realised on the ground, as part of our daily working lives at Green Hive. So Jane, could you move to the next slide, please? So Green Hive supports community-powered environmental action through the running and ongoing development of 3 distinct social enterprises, which I've listed here. These social enterprises are sited within our premises at the Green Hive Community Hub, which is based at Seaman's Hall near the harbour in the Fishertown precinct of Nairn, and also the Green Hive Community Workshop, which is located at the Balmakeith Industrial Estate on the eastern side of the town. Next slide, please. So the story of how these 3 social enterprises have developed goes back 10 years to our beginnings as an organisation. So Green Hive was formed in 2015, and essentially what it was a sort of group of friends and sort of like-minded people who cared about the town, who lived here and cared about the town, and wanted to find a way of working together to do things that helped to improve the town. And so, and come together as like I say, as a group of friends and provide sort of social opportunities and stuff like that. So that, our very, very humble beginnings, I would say. It all started about 10 years ago with a community litter pick, which I've got a picture from here. That was in autumn 2015, and it was before my time, but the people who were there, tell me that they were very surprised and delighted, really, that 50 people turned up for that initial event. And we sort of developed from there. We registered as a charity in 2017, and over the years we sort of it's a kind of, I sometimes call it the can-do charity, because we sort of developed a range of activities that are, very diverse and kind of a mixed bag of different things we did. So we got involved in, like I say, community litter picks. We did a lot of community gardening, tree planting. We did we've been doing some invasive species control. We've got 2 community orchards, and so we got involved in sort of apple pressing and all sorts of things. Like I say, the can-do charity. We basically, sort of the weirder and the wackier the idea, and we were very sort of open to the people that were involved in our volunteering, coming to us with different ideas, and like I say, we pretty much do anything, if it seemed like a good idea. So that's our kind of beginnings. Could I go to the next slide, please, Jane? So, I mean, as you can imagine, with that with that kind of personality, there was kind of, sometimes, maybe a sense of confusion, sort of multiple personalities and things like that. And we sort of, come to realize over the years, that we needed much more sort of clarity and sense and a better sense of direction, and also, maybe some steadier sources of income as well. So, like I say, we were always open to ideas, from our from our volunteers, on what we could do and how we could, develop as an organisation. And so one of the ideas that developed out of that kind of sort of ongoing conversation was, what we could do with some of the stuff that we were picking up on the beach in Nairn. In common with many coastal towns in Scotland, Nairn has a real problem with sort of discarded waste marine plastics. And we were picking up a lot of this kind of material from the beach and obviously putting it into the Highland Council sort of recycling system, and that was fine. But it occurred to us over time, that this was potentially, quite a useful material, and it might actually sort of provide the basis for doing something maybe a wee bit more creative. And so from that sort of germ of an idea, sorry, actually, can I go to the next slide, Jayne? From that germ of an idea, we developed, actually, maybe back to the next one. I do apologize every time. Like I say, there's going to be some confusion around the slides because I changed the order this morning when I was thinking about what to say. But from that germ of an idea, we opened in 2019 our community workshop. So the community workshop, and I'll give you some more boilerplate here. The community workshop supports participation, skill development and positive environmental action by working with volunteers to take discarded waste plastics out of local ecosystems and converting these into useful everyday items for sale to clients across the public, third and private sectors. That's locally, regionally in the north of Scotland, and increasingly nationally. We've actually sort of fulfilled commissions, for places all around Scotland, which I'm really pleased about, and actually even beyond Scotland. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Jayne. And this is an example of some of those commissions that we do. So we're working with volunteers basically to take these discarded plastics and turn them into, like I say, useful objects like this. This is a memorial bench for an old sea captain here in Nairn, who's sadly no longer with us. But you won't be able to see some of the details in this, but there's like coordinates on this and sort of details of his fishing vessel and things like that. So if I could go to the next slide, please, Jim. So, like I said, the community workshop opened in 2019, but we were still carrying on doing all the other things that we were doing, the tree planting, the gardening, and also, working, with sort of foodstuffs as well, like apple pressing. And we soon came to realize that was kind of an inappropriate, or rather that sort of a mix of things. I'm talking plastics and apple pressing, was not really suitable for the tiny premises that we had at Balmakeith Industrial Estate. So we soon, realized that we would have to sort of acquire larger premises, as that smaller space became busier. So in 2022, we acquired this building, which is Seaman's Hall in Fishertown, which was built in 1887 by public subscription. It was basically built as a mission hall for the local community, the local fishing community here in Fishertown. Very, very interesting history embedded in the heart of the Fishertown community. But by the time we'd acquired it, it had been essentially out of use for 30 years. Next slide, please. So since taking ownership, we've been developing public programs aimed at basically re-establishing Seaman's Hall as a vibrant hub for the local community. And that obviously includes sort of gradual refurbishment and improvements to access and things like that. So you can see some diagrams here from our architects, Oberlinder's architects, for a kind of feasibility study that we've been trying to work to over the last few years. But basically what we provide here is like affordable spaces for rent for local people and local community groups to run activities. And it's also the base of operations for two more of our social enterprises. If I could go to the next slide, please, Jayne. So the first of those is our Active Travel Hub. And the Active Travel Hub consists of two parts, the first being Trike Nairn, which you see an illustration of here. And that's essentially providing kind of e-rickshaw rides for local people, affected by social, sort of lacking social, affected by social isolation or affected by mobility problems, sort of barriers and things like that. So basically, the volunteers, we have a team of volunteers that take the trike out and and meet up with people at local care homes and things like that, and take them out for rides around the town. And the second part, which I don't have an illustration for, is our e-bike service. We're very fortunate recipients of a fleet of 12 e-bikes from Glasgow School of Art a couple of years ago, and so obviously we rent these out to local people at very affordable rates. There's nowhere else actually within between I would say Inverness and maybe Lossiemouth, there's nobody else providing this service, and so we've kind of cornered the market, and we opened up a niche that we're quite pleased about, and it obviously provides very useful income. And once again, our volunteers are heavily involved in that. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's e-bikes there. But if I could go to the next slide. The other social enterprise we run at Siemens Hall is what we call our zero waste fabric store, and this is essentially doing the same with textiles and fabrics that we receive by donation. Doing the same with these textiles and fabrics as we do with our plastics at Community Workshop. And by that I mean we work with volunteers to take these unwanted materials and teach sewing skills and things like that. But basically the idea is to turn these unwanted materials into useful items which we can then sell. So if I could go to the next slide. And here's an example of one of our commissions. This was some bunting that we produced for Nairn Bid for the Nairn Book and Arts Fair last year. Yeah, could I go to the next slide, please? Next slide. This is one of the ones that's out of order. Next slide again. Yeah, and this is my final slide actually, and I really just want to sort of talk about where we're going from now. We've always been a volunteer-led and in a very volunteer sort of reliant organisation. Over certainly in the last few years, we've and certainly with the success of our community workshop where we work with the plastics, we've come to the conclusion that we need to evolve, and so we are in a kind of period of transition where we're moving over. I mean, we'll always be open. Our doors will always be open to volunteers, and we'll always need that lifeblood. But we've come to the conclusion, certainly at our community workshop, that we'd like to evolve into a more sort of trainee and employability-based organisation. And so with that in mind, we are currently registering with Qualifications Scotland to become a Qualifications Scotland approved training centre, with the ability to support accredited learning, accredited vocational skills, learning, and the ability to support people for qualifications like SVQs and things like that. So that will be the whole of Green Hive. It will be focused initially on our community workshop, but the idea is to roll that out to the other social enterprises that we run. We think there's plenty of scope within our active travel hub and within the zero waste fabric store for accredited learning pathways and skills development in the same way. Yeah. I mean, we've always done a little bit of this. We've got many sort of success stories and over the years of working with volunteers who have come to us. Have been referred to as, like, for instance, by the local social prescribing team at Nairn Medical Centre, or a community payback, or people that have come to us, having face certain barriers to employment, and hope to see, hope by volunteering at Green Hive that we'll be able to support valuable work experience, valuable skills development, with a view to sort of moving into employment at a later date. And so, like I say, we've got many success stories of people we've helped sort of overcome these barriers in the past and have moved into employment. After working with Green Hive, we have very good connections with a number of local employers. I'm thinking like Gordon's Timber and Inverfab and Inverness and things like that. People who have come through Green Hive and have gone on to paid employment with reputable firms like that, which we're very pleased about, obviously. But the changes that I've described just now are attempts to kind of formalize some of these informal success stories that we've had. So we're working with, or we've been speaking rather with DYW Highland, for instance, who are based at Nairn Academy, and talking with various sort of pipeline organisations, if you like, about how we can provide a place to go for a regular pipeline of recent school leavers and people facing different barriers to employment. So I do apologise for the rather confused and garbled presentation. That is sort of based on my flustered state after the problems with the slides this morning. But very happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Matthew. I think the one thing that you didn't mention, or at least I didn't catch, was the phenomenal kind of involvement rate that you've got across your community. Is it not like, remind me of the stat, because I think it's pretty impressive in terms of the amount of engagement you have with the community. Yeah, no, you're very kind, Jane, and thanks for reminding me. Like I said, we've been going for 10 years, and in that time, we calculate that we've worked with about 1,300 volunteers, which is a great number, no doubt. But when you actually compare it to the population of Nairn and Nairnshire, which is our focus demographic, the population is 13,000. So we calculate we've basically engaged the equivalent of 1 in 10 people in the Nairn and Nairnshire. Yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. I'm also a big fan of seeing dogs in presentation slides as well. So thank you for that also, Matthew. I think really now it's over to you, to the people that have come along today. If there are any questions, I must admit, because I've been sharing the slides, I've not been able to keep up with the chat, but it looks like there's maybe been some discussion happening in the chat, which is always good. But yeah, if you've got any questions for anyone or any of your own experiences that you would like to share with us around what's worked well with you for volunteering, please do free to raise a real or a virtual hand, and we will bring you in. So Pegs, you're up first.
Try and get my mic and then my lowering my hand in the right order. Yeah, surprise, surprise. Thanks, Jane, and thanks, Matthew, Stewart, and Sam. I think it's really brilliant that this webinar has been put on, because this has been something that has been bubbling away and coming up in other spaces around volunteering and employability. So for those that don't know me, I'm Pegs. I work nationally on all things third sector and employability, closely with quite a few TSI folks that are on here, as well as social enterprise folks as well. So I just wanted to, I guess there's some questions, and then maybe just some thoughts as well. So I guess one of the things which comes up a bit, so this might be the question, so hold this one, is that sometimes for some people volunteering can end up becoming either rightly the outcome, because that is going to be the best thing for that individual, which makes it quite difficult in the context of employability, or it can become a kind, not a dead end, that's not quite the right word, but like sometimes I think there can be a sense that third sector organizations, social enterprises, maybe don't support people to move into work, because you know what, you've got an amazingly valuable volunteer and it's actually real pain in the bum once you've got them up and running and working really well, to then kind of, you know, encourage them into a job elsewhere, or, you know, you might not have the budget to provide them paid work. So that's kind of the tension that I'm really interested in hearing your reflections on. And I'm just going to totally hijack this and say, at the same time as this has been happening behind the scenes, I've started a few conversations with colleagues in Volunteer Scotland, TSI colleagues, around maybe developing a briefing on volunteering as a pathway to work in terms of why it matters and what the evidence is around that. And also maybe seeing if we could develop some guidelines that would be useful around volunteering, specifically in the context of as it being a pathway to work, to maybe mitigate against some of those issues that I mentioned around the kind of /dead end / you know, it not being necessarily the right thing for that person. And so I'm really happy. I'll pop my email in the chat, but if anybody's interested in being part of those conversations, please get in touch, because that's sort of nascent work that's just beginning at the moment. So yeah.
Excellent. Right. Thanks, Peg. So there's an offer there from Pegs in terms of getting involved in that conversation and that guidance, but also the question around reflecting on the tension. Go on, Pegs.
Sorry, and it's just something somebody has put in the chat that's reminding me of the other thing, that there is also a bit of work happening nationally around clarifying the difference between volunteering and unpaid work experience. And again, an area where there can sometimes be a bit of tension, or a little bit of kind of messiness around that. So there is work underway around that as well. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Peg. Okay, who wants to kind of talk a little bit about the tension that Pegs was talking about between, you know, when volunteering is a pathway, or maybe when it becomes, well, less of a pathway and more of a maze sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't. I wouldn't pretend to speak authoritatively on this, but it is a question. You know, it is a discussion that's been ongoing within Green Hive. You know, when we aspire to work to the volunteer charter, and we have done, you know, for the entirety of our existence. But one of the key points within that is that you must not treat volunteers as an unpaid workforce. You know, if you're an organisation that brings in income through social enterprise activities, you know, that is actually a no to treat your volunteers like, you know, unpaid workers. And you know, and it's you know, it's something that we, you know, that it actually sort of sits behind our you know, our you know, strategic evolution into an organisation that actually is focused more on trainees and apprentices come along, because, you know, we don't want to run foul of that, or, you know, we don't want to mistreat our volunteers in that way, and so it's something that we have had to think of. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew.
If you don't mind me, I can jump on. You want to go, Stuart?
Oh, okay.
You go.
So yeah, just through experience in the last couple of years. So every time I go to the job centre, I do say that for some people on the employability pathway, volunteering is the outcome, and it should be recognised as a destination, as an outcome. But this is an ongoing chat with, you know, just shouting it every time I turn up anywhere is my kind of goal with that one. But all charities that I've partnered up with, they all say the same thing, that if they didn't have the volunteers, the charity wouldn't operate. So the people who are employed by the charity, they wouldn't have a job. So in a roundabout way, it's kind of convincing job centre and governments and other authorities that volunteers might not be earning money. They might be living on benefits, but they're benefiting the charities by giving jobs and giving outcomes to the charities itself. So yeah, this is my kind of my shouty about bit that I do every time I walk in the job centre. And also with the letting go, when I meet charities, I obviously explain that this is the purpose. It is an employability pathway. It does have an end, although there's not a time frame as such. It is to encourage a person to volunteer. So there is a risk that they don't want to, the charities don't want to. But a lot of charities, I've had 3 or 4 people who've been volunteering who have started to work for the charity when funding has become available. So that's a possibility. Another one, which there's Broughty, which is a community cafe for women's charities based out in Broughty Ferry. and they have their own employability course. And in my connecting networking thing that I also like to do, they have joined in within All in Dundee and Discover Work as an employability provider as well. So I think there's probably funding and things like that going there, but I just make the connections and let other people do all the work, as Sam knows.
Yes,
If that
Stuart
helps.
is very, very good at making connections, and I know we'll have to chat, Begs, about that briefing and about the idea of volunteering versus unpaid work. It's something that we've actually come across quite a bit, less so in Scotland, a bit more down south, where a tender or an opportunity will come out, and it very much reads as they're looking for volunteers to do unpaid work rather than a volunteering role. So we've turned down quite a few where it's not been appropriate. And I think we've worked quite hard for volunteering to become an outcome, and that it is seen as a positive contribution. And less so that the kind of dead end, as you maybe pointed out. I think what's also worth mentioning is employability doesn't necessarily have to be through an external organisation. We do quite a bit of work in Dumfries and Galloway with South of Scotland Enterprise about supporting people to become self-employed and to develop their own businesses and business ideas. We had an individual who is paralysed from the neck down completely. They never thought he would volunteer. They never thought he would leave his house again. He is now setting up a business to provide training and support for people like him so that he can go to other organizations, companies and businesses and tell them how to, and basically train them how to support paralyzed and disabled individuals. So it's not always necessarily the same pathway as well. It can look very different from each individual perspective. Self-employment is something we're seeing quite a bit at the moment. People wanting to kind of develop their own routes. But yes, that's always an option as well.
Okay, thanks very much to all three of you for kind of tackling that one. I think that there's a lot of kind of nuance here in some of these areas. I remember we worked with a member in Aberdeen once who had somebody volunteering with them for a certain number of hours, and then they were on permitted earnings for a certain number of hours, and that caused all sorts of chaos and difficulties and ended up with repercussions at HMRC. So it is really important that you can be as clear as possible on this. There's a question in the chat, I think, from Carl at Cake or Dice Cake, also in Dundee. I don't know whether you want to come on mic and say that, Carl, because I think it kind of feeds into what we've been talking about. Oh, I can't hear you, Carl. Can anyone else hear Carl? You seems like you're off mute, but I can't hear you. We're going to start.
There we go.
Yes, excellent. I was going to say we're starting and ending the session with technical difficulties.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
we can
Apparently
hear
my
you.
computer
Thanks,
has about
Tom.
10 different inputs. Okay. So I work at Cake or Dice. I'm the operations director there. We're entirely volunteer staffed. There's quite a churning of staff, shall we say, in terms of people come fantastically, they manage to get a job and they leave us. Obviously, there is that thing of all that time, like, yeah, you're really good, and then you leave, and then you suddenly realize, oh yeah, that's the point. But obviously, it can be relatively interrupting in terms of service provision. But we have, I'm going to say 5 or 6 volunteers, I want to say, who like they don't see anything past the volunteering stage, and they come and they work with us basically every week, a few shifts. And like you were saying about the unpaid workforce versus volunteers, in my head, I'm now just kind of going, do we still call them volunteers? Because that seems now like it's a bit of a grey area.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Does anyone want to come in on that one?
I'm not have any legal understanding of this, but the reason I only work with charities is because charities are supported by volunteers, and it's a fine thing to do. So I don't think it really matters how long somebody's volunteering for. The reason I don't work with private sector organizations is because somebody is paid to do the job the volunteer is volunteering for. So in that case, that's not necessarily correct.
So we're a CIC, so it's kind of that half and half, I guess, type thing. Yeah, that's why I was a bit like, it's a little bit more confusing, I guess, than straight up we're a charity. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the legal ins and outs, but I know with my job, my work is I do work with a few CICs and a few charities, and only because they are supported by volunteers. So it's kind of, yeah, there's no one getting paid doing the job the volunteers doing, is my basic understanding,
Oh, okay. No,
which
I
is my
think
very, very simple basic understanding.
yeah. No, I
Don't
think I've
quote me on
actually
that.
I've actually sent you a message anyway, Stuart, because I think it'd
Yes,
be useful
it's
to have a
so
chat outside of this. So yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Carl. Pegs, are you coming in with a question or an answer?
I was just going to give an answer. I can't see if anybody from Volunteer Scotland is still on, but I think, yeah, I think my understanding is it has to be distinct from paid work, but it can go on for as long, like the point of volunteering, in fact, very distinctly from, say, work experience or work placements, they're generally time limited. Volunteering can be indefinite, and indeed should, in a lot of ways, kind of, that's a great thing. So, so I think that's okay. It's about being really clear about the role description that it is, and kind of what distinguishes the volunteer roles as opposed to the small number of paid roles that you might have, and being able to kind of have a clear distinction in terms of expectations. For example, Edinburgh Council got done was that last year or 2 years ago? Somebody else might know more about this. They had people on what they were calling volunteer opportunities in, I think it was an outdoor education centre, but they were expecting people to turn up on shift. And if they didn't turn up on shift, they were expected to do other shifts to make up for the ones they hadn't gone to. And they got done on that point, and they had to back pay and give those people salaries. So I think just being really clear about the expectations, what are different between paid roles and unpaid volunteering roles, is really, really critical. As soon as you're starting to rely on them and treat them like they're paid employees, then you're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think there might be others.
HMRC will want a word at that point as well. And that's to be avoided. I think we probably all would agree with that. So I am very conscious of time, that we have overrun ever so slightly. Thank you for sticking with us. Unless there's any more burning questions, what I will do is I've posted a link to the evaluation in the chat. If you could just take a minute to complete that, that would be really helpful for us. I want to say, obviously, a big thank you to our speakers today for taking the time out of their day and sharing their expertise and experience with us. So thanks to Sam, to Stewart, and to Matthew. Also, thanks to you all for coming along and joining us today, and for getting involved in these sorts of discussions. And it feels like there's more discussions to be had, I think, around some of this. So perhaps this is another follow-up session for us. I will send the presentations out along with speaker emails, so you can follow up. Pegs, I'll include you in that as well for people who want to get in touch with you. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday. It's Thursday, isn't it? It's been one of those weeks. Yeah, hopefully maybe see you again soon. So thank you all again.